always precedes Chag Sameach. Today is in fact Chag, right? This is holiday time, and we're going to get back to that. In the meanwhile, it's so good to see everybody. And yeah, we're not yet all here, but we're getting there. The calendar. October 4th, noon, is our next current events happening. And I am just so pleased. When we started the current events class, we didn't know where the world would throw at us a constant barrage of problems. And thank God it is. So we'll have a lot to discuss tonight, which is now. They're expecting hundreds of thousands of protest marchers in Israel protesting the government. So things are still going on, but I won't talk about that. That's October 4th.
But
Now,
God bless them.
October 11th was set for a presentation by Leah Hochman and me about our new book in the Sukkah. October 11th has been canceled. I mean, there'll be an October 11th, but there won't be a program in the Sukkah. Instead, it is November 5th. November 5th. If you would please mark that down. It's a Sunday. It'll be 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And we're going to have fun doing that. So that is not October 11th, but yes, November 5th. Cindy, do you have announcements for us?
Tomorrow, if it doesn't rain, we're having happy hour in the sukkah. If it rains, we're having happy hour inside, and we'll look at the sukkah. So if you can just pray for the rain to stop. I think it's supposed to come tonight. It's going to be a wonderful time. I know Lynn, Mara, Risa, and Doris are all coming, and we're looking forward to a wonderful afternoon.
Your hair looks great.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's nice to have hair again.
No one said that to me about hair being nice. Okay, so Cindy, that's it for that's right now coming up on Monday?
Yeah, no, it's tomorrow.
Sunday.
Sunday, tomorrow at Irmis at 3 o'clock. We have 47 people coming.
Wow.
So it'll be a great afternoon.
Wow.
Wow.
Thank you for that. Okay.
Is that $18?
Let's do a little checking in. Anything happening in the world? I am missing, and maybe you can help me, one individual who used to be here every single week, and I just realized he's not here. I don't know what to do about it. Oh, Effie, you are here. I was worried about you. Okay, now I don't worry. Okay, I can't see you, but I'm not going to worry. Good. I was worried. I was thinking about that. Checking in. Anything else going on in your private, personal lives that you want to share with us before it becomes a headline in the National Enquirer?
Ella Travolta is going to be singing for President Biden for his birthday.
Okay, great.
And I may be there with her and her father.
Okay. Anything else going on in the world with our people?
In my world, we have a bat mitzvah next week.
Oh,
Nice.
so special.
Okay. Now we're going to actually go into our meeting, our study today. Eric mentioned it, but I've been in touch with our daughter, Shoshana, in New York, with the flooding, with the rain, with all the stuff going on. It's been very difficult. One gentleman told the New York Times, standing forlornly in the middle of his flooded backyard, I built a sukkah. I should have built an ark. I mean, that was a pretty Jewish comment, right? And then the Times went on to talk about the fact that Heavy rains flooded highways, shut down subway. More than 8 inches of rain fell at Kennedy Airport Friday afternoon. More now. And the governor of New York, this doesn't happen all that much, posted on social media Friday afternoon, to our Jewish neighbors celebrating the beginning of Sukkot, please take steps to stay safe during this severe winter thing. So we are all together, at the top of everybody's attention, and that's nice.
May I ask you a question about Sukkot?
May I finish, please?
Yes, sir.
And the Times went on to say that despite the fact that many New York Jews will be supposed to be eating in their sukkah Friday night, they'll be eating indoors on the holiday's first night. And this sparked a wide variety of theological and practical responses from rabbis and rank and file Jews as well. You have to understand that rabbis all over New York are issuing edicts as to how to handle a rained out Sukkot, which I think is good because it's like a jobs program for rabbis. It keeps them busy. One stated, if it rains on the first night of Sukkot, it's a sign that God is displeased with us. And it's been raining several days. What are we supposed to do? So apparently, at least in New York, God is really unhappy and is flooding Sukkot. But there's also the interesting overlay of superstition. If you're rained out on the first night of Sukkot, it's a sign that God is displeased with you. Knowing that daughter Shoshana would have a sukkah and things were flooding, I called her up as a duly designated father and said, do you know when it's raining too much to eat in the sukkah? To my disappointment, she did not have a Talmudic response. I then gave her what actually is there. If it rains so much that a dish of uncooked beans is ruined, then you must eat inside. She hung up on me. But in any event, that's what the Talmud tries to say about that. Effie, you have your hand up?
Yeah, if I leave a little early, don't get nervous.
You're coming for me?
No, I'm just gonna leave early.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was just worrying about you, Effie. I don't know, you hadn't yelled at me in a long time, and I missed it. Okay. I am going to do something which, please do not in any way consider a reflection on anything else happening in the world, but I'm not aware of a Sukkot morning service today. So forget that I said that. I just want to read a little blessing. Remember those whose hearts poured out to you like water, who trusted that the journey would lead to you. For Abraham and Sarah's faith, do not withhold water. Remember the one chosen for her words, please take some water. Remember the one whose blood was almost spilled like water. And this is the fact that with Sukkot, we change from bring dew in the regular service to bring rain. This is the time, and the rain blessing will be remaining with us until Passover. What kind of rain? Livracha v'lo liklala, for blessing and not for curse. L'chayim v'lo l'mavet, for life and not for death, l'sova v'lo l'razon, for abundance and not for want. And then I'm going to do what Eric mentioned, but actually, if you check my notes, I had prepared to do this anyway. From the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, you know that Kohelet, Ecclesiastes, is the Megillah traditionally read the first morning of Sukkot. The first morning of Sukkot is one of the longest morning services of the year because it has a Torah reading, a Haftorah reading, and then you read the whole book of Ecclesiastes. I'm not going to read the whole book. I'm just going to read a selection. These are the words of Kohelet, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Hevel Havalim, Amar Kohelet, Hakol Hevel. Vapor of vapors, said Kohelet. Vapor of vapors, all is vapor. What real value is there a person in all the gains they make beneath the sun? One generation goes, another comes, but the earth remains the same forever. The sun rises, the sun sets, and glides back to where it rises, southward blowing, turning northward. Ever turning blows the wind. On its rounds the wind returns. All streams flow into the sea. Yet the sea is never full. To the place from which they flow, the streams flow back again. All such things are wearisome. No one can ever state them. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear enough of hearing. And listen to this. Only that shall happen which has happened. Only that shall occur which has occurred. There is nothing new under the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our little excursion into Ecclesiastes. I remember the time when I taught a course at university on the Megillot and taught Ecclesiastes. That's a pretty extraordinary book. And we read it in its whole. If you have time, no homework assignment. If you have time, go to
Rabbi, I pray to differ on that. Nothing new
Okay,
under
can
the
you
sun.
hold, please,
Yes, sir.
and
Yes,
not
sir.
interrupt unless you're called on? Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Yes, sir.
It's a time to read Ecclesiastes. I would suggest here's the setting: a glass of wine, a fireplace, and Ecclesiastes. But you can do it any way you want. It's a spectacular book. We turn now to Leviticus 23, verse 39. Leviticus 23.
Rabbi,
And wait 1 second, let me find it. Leviticus 23, and we're coming up to it. Leviticus 23,
I think it's page 824.
39. 23, 39. I can do this. And the reason for turning to this is that this is the reading for today, part of the reading in the Torah reading set aside for today. There was a question. Did someone have a question? I'm sorry. Question?
Yeah, Rabbi, when you were reading, you began with vapors, and isn't the normal translation vanity, and which is correct, and what's the why vapors?
First of all, when your rabbi says it, it's correct. Okay. Okay. Secondly, I'm going to turn right now to an objective outsider. Tamara, how do you translate Hevel Havalim? I
Muted.
The way you used it yesterday in your post, vapor of vapor. It's really the mist
Mhm.
that you see when it's cold and you see your breath and it dissipates. It's liquid that dissipates, or water from the kettle.
So, Brad, I do excuse you for challenging me, but there it is. The old translation, Hevel Havalim, vanity of vanities, all is vanity, is the old translation, but it does not meet current linguistic understandings. Vapor of vapor, you get the impression. Everything is evanescent. Oh, I like that word. Everything just has no substance to it. And that's what life is all about. Okay? So there you go. I mean, you can keep trying, Brad, but okay. So Tamara, please.
I wouldn't say it's has no substance. It evaporates, but it transmutes into something else. It becomes rain eventually. So it just vanishes. You can't hold on to it, and it's not stable. But it has substance, and because it's liquid, it's very vital.
All right, so I'm back down to mostly correct. Okay, that is fine. So, I hope that Noah. I mean, I would go on with the Kohelet for a long, long time, but I won't. So we're in Leviticus chapter 23, verse 39, and it reads. Mark on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the yield of your land, you shall observe the festival of the Eternal to last 7 days, a complete rest on the first day, and catch this next line, and a complete rest on the 8th day. Wait a second. How long is the holiday? Wait, on the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall observe the festival of the Eternal for 7 days. And then there's a complete rest on the 8th day. On the first day, you shall take the product of the hadar trees, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before the Eternal. That's 7 days. You shall observe it before the Eternal 7 days. In the 7th month, as a law for all time, throughout the ages, you shall live in booths 7 days. All citizens in Israel shall live in booths, in order that future generations may know that I made the Israelite people live in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. I'm the eternal God. Okay, so what is being read in the synagogue this morning is, if you will, the legal structure for Sukkot, and it's all here. And it's just interesting. I pointed out the first problem. Let's look at the calendar of Sukkot. It has an indeterminate length. It says 7 days. Yet we observe the 8th day, Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day of solemn assembly. Not only that, we have Simchat Torah. Is Simchat Torah a part of Sukkot?
Yeah.
Think about that. Answer no, it's not. Simchat Torah is, and I have to tell you, when one is working in the vineyards of the Lord and you're doing Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, all that stuff, in the minds of the staff, Sukkot ends once Simchat Torah is over. But that's not right. Sukkot ends, Shmini Atzeret, the 8th day of Solemn Assembly, Simchat Torah. Simchat Torah is another holiday. This is the only time in Jewish calendar where one holiday is up against another holiday with no break. Sukkot, Simchat Torah, they're different events. And that's very confusing. So in our synagogue, we would change all the Torah mantles on Simchat Torah. We would take the white mantles off and put the colored mantles back on. But actually, if we were being accurate, that should have happened before. Because Simchat Torah is not the close of Sukkot. It is an add-on additional holiday. Okay? Even though I don't object at all if you want to call it part of Sukkot. Okay? So let's look at this. Verse 39. Ach, b'chamishasar yom l'chodesh hashvi'i, mark, it says in the English, on the 15th day of the 7th month. Friday night was full moon. Okay? You might have noticed the change in behavior of some of your friends. Longer teeth, full moon, whatever it is that people do with full moon. A 50. So Rosh Hashanah is the 1st of the month. Yom Kippur is the 10th of the month. Sukkot is the 15th of the month. And it is therefore full moon. Rosh Hashanah, new, 15th, full. Okay? So that's how that works. But that first word really bothered the rabbis. Ach, b'chamishasar yom l'chodesh. Mark, on the 15th day, what is that ach all about? And I'm going to tell you. Ach wants us to look at what immediately preceded the commandments regarding Sukkot. Okay? If you look at verse 33, Eternal says, 15th day of the 7th month, Feast of Booths, on the 8th day you shall observe a sacred occasion. 8th day, we'll get to that as a problem. What came immediately before the instruction about Sukkot, Yom Kippur? So the ach, some rabbis say, you have to be careful not to violate the Sabbath. The Sabbath takes priority over Sukkot, so that when you observe Sukkot, you can't do things that violate the Sabbath. And this is a serious problem was Friday evening when you want to bring in hot food. And what do? So it's a serious concern. People work it out. So Rashi says the ach means don't violate the Sabbath while you're observing Sukkot. Okay? Easy enough. What could be the problem? If you carry something out of your house to bring it into the Sukkah, you could be violating the Sabbath boundaries. Or you could be violating the rules of heating. Don't do that. We can't do this on Shabbat. And I want to give you more because this is totally it's important. that the rabbis read this. The rabbis read this as an attempt. Boy, I lost. Now, how did I do this? We 39. Isn't that interesting? What's interesting is I lost my page. I never printed it. How could that be? Okay. The rabbis also want you to understand that Sukkot, please do not yell at me. The obligation to dwell in a sukkah is only for men. I didn't do this. Okay? The obligation is only for men. So the ach also is to help us understand that new converts are obligated, men are obligated, women are not obligated. Okay? So there we go with that. That's very funny. I really hate the fact that I didn't print the second page of my notes, which is going to be fine. Okay. There's some hands up. I see Sukasa.
This is just a question. How do they celebrate Sukkot in Israel? I mean, is it a holiday where businesses close? How do the Reform celebrate? Do they have a Sukkah, etc.?
Yeah. I answered all your questions. I have mentioned this here before. Risa and I had a glorious time during Sukkot living in Jerusalem. The restaurants will have Sukkot on the sidewalks, so that if you want to eat in a sukkah, you can still come and get your Italian dinner and eat in the sukkah. Okay, so that's done. Secondly, and I know I mentioned this before, but the memory is so powerful. We lived in an apartment complex, a very nice one, and I can do this without moving my hands. There was a long walkway into the complex, and the walkway was built for Jewish people. That is to say, there were indentations with bricks, with stuff. It was a real thing, and people built their sukkot in those indentations. Okay, so when you would walk home, you would walk on the walkway leading to the complex, and there are sukkot everywhere, and everyone's getting ready for a meal, and everyone's being friendly, and it's a mitzvah to have a glass of wine and a piece of bread in a sukkah. Do you know what it took to go home, to leave the sidewalk, walk into the complex? Oh, you're here, and I'm serious. This would take place absolutely like this as we would walk along the entranceway. Tell you the truth, we loved it. We loved it. It was incredible. Some of them didn't clean up after Sukkot was over. That was less attractive. But the Sukkot is a major festival. The stores, the shops are closed, and it is observed with the same level of seriousness as Passover, okay? Or Shavuot, but as Passover. Did I answer that question?
I have one question about it. May I ask? The Sukkot
Okay, Rebecca, I see you.
If Sukkot is on the Sabbath, does that mean you don't do the northeast, southwest thing with the lulav?
Can you say that without moving your hands? No, okay. Okay, now, you are not permitted to wave lulav and etrog on Shabbat. So that it would not have happened Friday evening and Saturday. But I will, by the way, the problem is that not that there was something so wrong with waving, but you would be inclined to carry the lulav, the etrog into shul. That's forbidden. So you're not supposed to do it. The Reform community has a small problem because we observe one day at the beginning, one day at the end. And if you don't wave lulav and etrog on the first day, we don't observe the second day of Yom Tov. That's a problem. So I will tell you, and you will judge me harshly, when this would occur, Stanley Davids would wave lulav and etrog on the first day of Sukkot if it happened on Yom Tov. Okay? That was my accommodation with the world. I know that I'll get letters and people will be angry and I'll get reported to the Wilshire Boulevard board. But nevertheless, that's what I did, because people come to services like Friday evening, and if you don't show the lulav and the etrog, most of them won't be back and they won't have the experience. Anyway, that's my extended answer. My secret is safe with you. Thank you. I am very happy. Steve, then Risa.
The first and eighth day are days of rest, and they're not always going to fall on Shabbat. When they say day of rest, are those days subject to all of the rules of Shabbat?
Shabbat is stricter. Remember, Steve, the Yom Kippur is referred to as Shabbaton, the Sabbath of Sabbaths. So it is very strictly observed. Shabbat is strict. On Sukkot, the requirements for staying within the boundaries of your property are not the same as they are on Shabbat. Okay, so it isn't as tight as Shabbat, and certainly Yom Kippur, Shabbat, Shabbaton. Okay, there is a little bit more flexibility. On the other hand, you're not going to cook, you're not going to work, and so forth. So you will observe the majority of the festival. Steve, did I answer your question?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Risa?
I just think it's interesting. People might be curious about this. If you have a proper balcony that you can make your sukkah on, it's called a sukkah balcony, and it's a premium price on the rental of the apartment or the purchase of the apartment. The price goes up if you have that possibility. In our building, the each porch was above another porch, even though it was 2 stories higher, and they couldn't build Sukkot except if you were on the top floor, because then it would be open to see the sky. So the people in the building who didn't get niches in the front built the Sukkot all around the building, and everybody had a sukkah. And when you walked through, even in the middle of the day, not just when there were meals being served, you had people who were spending the whole day reading and enjoying being in the sukkah. So
They were living in the sukkah. In terms of Israeli real estate, I don't know if Trump ever got involved in Israeli real estate, but in Israeli real estate, you will see an ad that says apartment, sale, sukkah, balcony. I mean, it'll be right there because that's a more valuable thing if you want to observe Sukkot in your home and you have a balcony that is open to the sky so you can build a real sukkah. That's a more expensive apartment. And that's Israeli real estate. It's a little bit
Wow.
different, a little bit different.
And
Okay, Jonah, what's your question?
about the Sukkot and the Feast of Tabernacles and Booths, is this not about when you're traveling in the desert for 40 years and you didn't have a place to stay?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. That's more my problem.
Okay, oh, bless your heart. Is the Sukkot and the Festival of Booths, Feast of Tabernacles about when we're traveling in the desert and we didn't have a home yet, right? So if you're like looking for an apartment and you're gonna get married and moving, it's the same thing,
Okay,
right?
it's my failing. I did not understand you and I apologize.
Neither did
Rabbi,
I.
she asked if the Sukkot were to represent how people lived in the desert when they were traveling and didn't have permanent places to live. I
That
think
is
that was
true.
the question.
When Risa and I visited Egypt and we were going up the Nile, I forget which way it's up or down, whatever. We passed by agricultural settlements where temporary booths were built for the farm workers to live out in the field until they did their work. So apparent, and you know, it's no big deal. Apparently building temporary booths for agricultural purposes was common. They did that. And yes, according to Jewish tradition, the Israelites lived in temporary dwellings. By the way, one of the mitzvot, and it's very interesting, take your house and make your house a temporary dwelling. Take your sukkah and make the sukkah the permanent dwelling during Sukkot.
That's
Okay.
beautiful.
Yes,
Thank you, Rabbi.
it comes from that tradition. Now, Hadar trees. Please look at verse 40. On the first day, you shall take the product of Hadar trees. The word Hadar means beautiful, lovely, nice, comely. And it doesn't identify what the tree is. So the rabbis have a ball. The Hadar tree is a tree where the fruit and the bark taste the same. Okay? So you have a tree where you can eat the fruit or chew on a piece of bark, it'll taste the same. Wait, that's not good enough. Something else. Rabbis say, do you know what Adam ate in the Garden of Eden?
May I say?
It was the etrog.
Intro.
For all these years, you thought he ate an apple or more likely fig. Nah, according to this, Adam ate an etrog. I cannot testify to the accuracy of that description. I have no picture of Adam chewing anything, but the etrog was the fruit that preceded original sin. So that's something nice to look at. Tell me about the etrog. Where did it originate?
From the tree of life?
In the Far East.
Fine.
It is not native to the West.
Fine. Ancient. I love it.
Today, the Far East still has a major crop of etrogim,
Wow.
but they're not kosher in Israel.
Fine.
Now, what could make a piece of fruit not kosher? Now, this is for serious rabbinic thought.
The
Donna,
store-
go for it.
Oh, the store and the.
Oh, no, hold it. Donna Shapiro.
There's a bug on it.
You said that with utter disdain. Now, I forgive that. You do know, you started a thought process. You remember when the Israelis pulled out of the Gaza Strip in that first, which cataclysmic exchange and all that? Israeli farmers had established in the Gaza Strip greenhouses for raising vegetables that had no bugs. The greenhouses were established. We went into one. Greenhouses were established, all covered with material, and there was an outer door and an inner door and a whole big thing that no bugs could get into the product. Because if you eat a salad, now I don't want you to feel uncomfortable from here on out. In America, it is not unlikely that somewhere in the lettuce is a little bug. That is forbidden. You cannot have a kosher salad if there is a bug in the lettuce. I wish I were making this up, but I'm not. Okay.
Bugs can be healthy.
So there was product from the Gaza Strip Jewish farms. They would sell in the supermarket
I don't know.
bug-free. And it was high priced, so that the farms in the Gaza Strip were making a lot of money for their product. Bug-free lettuce. And if you've never worried about it before, now you can worry about it. It is a thing. So the question is,
They have bug juice at every Jewish camp in the world.
Why couldn't you just rinse off?
wait, I have to recover from that comment.
Why couldn't you just rinse off the lettuce and get rid of the bug that way? Why do you have to worry about it?
I suppose you could, but it is a lot of work to really tear off the leaves and rinse the lettuce leaf by leaf. Could it be done? Yes. Isn't it nicer to go to a supermarket and pick up a head of lettuce that has been untouched by a bug? Okay. So the comment about bug juice is very unworthy, Steve. All of us who went to camp had bug juice. Why it was called bug juice, I don't know. But it was like what was bug juice? It was
I see.
no, it was kind
It
of
was like Kool-Aid.
yes, okay. It was like thank you. It was like a Kool-Aid, and it was called bug juice. And I don't know why. If you find out why, please let me know. Now, the question was, why etrogim grown in the Far East have been declared by the Israeli Rabbanut as not kosher? Because they have grafted their trees.
What?
Risa, please try not to pass out when I'm teaching. The
God forbid.
you can't utilize one of the reasons why an etrog tree could be grafted on to another tree is that the etrog tree is not a sturdy tree. And please, when you leave today's class, you will have learned things for which you have no need whatsoever. The etrog tree is not sturdy, and in Southeast Asia, they would graft the etrog onto a sturdier tree to grow their etrogim. Now that you know this, I hope you feel good about it. So etrogim grown in the Far East are not kosher. What will make an etrog grown in the right place not kosher? What can happen to an etrog that would make it not kosher?
Contaminated water?
I see one hand. All right, Risa, go for it. What? Risa, say something.
The stem. You have to have the stem.
If the little stem at the top of the etrog is broken off, the etrog is not kosher. It has to be perfect.
Oh.
Okay, now that you know that. So the pre-Eitz Hadar, the fruit of a beautiful tree, nowhere does it say this is an etrog, but it came to be understood as the etrog. Okay, on the first day you shall take the product of the Hadar tree, branches of palm trees, boughs of leafy trees, willows of the brook, and rejoice before God 7 days, which means on the 8th day of assembly, Shmini Atzeret, though it is a separate holiday, you don't wave the lulav and the etrog. Okay, so I don't want to see anybody making a mistake about that. Okay, we got that? Okay. And you shall observe it for 7 days, live in the booth 7 days. When it says all citizens, call Ezrach, verse 42, that's the cue that women are not to do it because they don't rank as full citizens. They are just women. And so they're not required to live in the sukkah. Okay, question about that? Any questions about that?
I have a question.
Please, where? Effie?
Yes, that means they can if they want to, but they're not required.
Absolutely correct. Excuse me, I'm coughing a little bit. Sukasa Howard.
It says that all citizens of Israel shall live in the booth. Does that mean that women were not citizens?
No.
They were not fully citizens the way men were in the ancient world. And therefore, the rabbis read Kol Ezrach, every citizen, as a statement, women are not required. Please, may I just put a footnote in for this particular rabbi? Of course, women are required. And of course, women do, and the men and the lulav.
I believe I'm correct. They also weren't considered in the census, women.
The one could say, Sukasa, that women don't count. But the answer is yes. When they did a census, I want to reflect on another thing that you don't do on Shabbat, shofar blowing. You are not supposed to blow the shofar, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, on Shabbat. Why? Why? Same reason as the lulav and etrog. You might carry it. At some times in Jewish history, people would shove the shofar into the wool of a sheep, and the sheep would carry the shofar to the synagogue. Laughing, Brad, that was not a happy laugh. Sticking the shofar into the wool of a sheep would allow the shofar to appear at the synagogue.
Wouldn't they just bring it the day before?
They could also bring it the day before, but it's much more fun to put it into the wool of a sheep. So, okay, Howard.
I think there could be another whole way of resolving all this, which is having to do with the way the text was put together, the different strands, and
yes,
in the book, a book about that tries to separate that all. All the text in Leviticus in this area is all from the priestly source, except for the exact section that you read, starting with 39 and ending in 43, which is concluded to be a something that was put in much later by what they call the redactor, that put the different texts together. So the priestly text may be very old, and these particular paragraph are much later, and that would explain some of the inconsistencies. For example, in 37, it says, "These are the Lord's appointed times, which you shall call holy assemblies," as if it was summing everything up. And then suddenly in 39, it says, what do you call it? Or just?
Yes,
Like it's like, but, now here's something new. And that this whole section is new. And that explains some of the contradictions. And also the question about citizen, the citizen could be translated as native, I think. And probably the way it was plainly written, it doesn't say anything about men or women, but the rabbis invented this whole concept, in my opinion, could have been, citizen means men only, in order to explain these different contradictions, which if they had only realized that the text is not consistent, it doesn't have to be explained, would have saved everybody a lot of trouble.
May I just say that your comment on is very well taken, and it's very interesting that a later writer might have said, whoa, wait a second, and then put this little inserted paragraph in. That's a very nice suggestive way of understanding how the editing process might have gone. And I thank you for that. You're reading this, let me just insert this, not quite the same. Tamara.
To add to what was just said, it's clearly an addition because the first round of instruction for Sukkot is given earlier in verse 33 to 36.
Exactly.
And then you have a summary. These are, I just have given you all the laws, and then suddenly there is this addition. And it probably is a late addition, and it's based on what happens Nehemiah 8, when the Israelites come back and they have Sukkot, which is very much like the Sukkot we observe, where they build Sukkot, and men, women, and children are all part of it.
Now, Tamara, not that I would put you on the spot, I heard that we have a world-class scholar of Ezra in our midst. Okay. Now, tell me about Ezra and Sukkot.
Well, it's actually Ezra and Nehemiah in chapter 8 of Nehemiah. After Rosh Hashanah, they at some point they look at the Torah. The community leaders look at the Torah and they find out there's a commandment to do Sukkot. And for the first time in the Bible, we have a description of what they actually did. And in that description, they are building supposedly based on the Torah. So I'm kind of imagining it that somebody said, oh, that must have been in the Torah, so they put it into the Torah. But they left the seam, they let us know that it's an addition.
Okay, so in the text with Ezra, that's where you really have Sukkot appearing for the first time like that.
Like that in Nehemiah, it's Ezra Nehemiah, it's in the Nehemiah part of the book, yes. After they rebuilt the temple and rebuilt Jerusalem and they celebrate first with Rosh Hashanah for the first time in the Bible, and then Sukkot. We have mentions of people celebrating Sukkot before, but all of those cases talk about sacrifices only. It's only in Nehemiah 8 that we have the actual building of Sukkot. And it says people built it on the roofs, in the courtyard, and everyone was living in those Sukkot. So it's very much the way it's celebrated today.
Which is kind of neat. Would you not agree?
Yeah, it's the only time it's actually, we don't have many depictions of actual celebrations of any of the holidays, but we have that first Rosh Hashanah in Nehemiah 1, and then in Nehemiah 8, at the beginning of the chapter, and then the celebration of Sukkot with actual Sukkot.
And okay, we have to end because this is totally fascinating, but this is, of course, after the Babylonian exile.
Right.
So is it possible that those traditions developed in Babylonia?
Could very well be, yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't you like to be a time traveler?
Yeah.
Go back, right? And just for a couple of minutes. Oh, look, honey, they're waving a lulav. Wow. Okay. To me, that would be very, very neat. But finding Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot and Ezra and Nehemiah post-Babylonian captivity moves the biblical text forward. Give me a date for Ezra in the 400s.
For this piece, probably around 444.
I would have said that, but I didn't want to,
PCE 444.
Okay, so I gave in general 400, but that means, let's end with this. For 2,400 years, we have been building Sukkot.
Right.
Okay? Is that not a nice thing? And I like that. Okay, terrific. Thank you. We're going to go to Kaddish at this point, and we mentioned those who have passed away during the past month: Masood Bina, Elaine Gumpert, Eric Jonathan Hammermesh, Linda Lubitz, Robert Rosenfield, Lena Silver, Stanley Simon, Norma Temkin, Judy Wunsch, Joseph Zuskin. And we mentioned the following: the anniversaries of whose deaths have occurred during the past week. I'm sorry. Morris Abrams, Paula Almond, Arlen Howard Anderson, Bernard Bash, Issachar Dick Vega, Teresa Ruth Bell, Jean Bennett, Ida Block, Richard Block, Maxine Bookman, Chris Breskin, Bernard Chapman, Laura Cohn, Marvin Cohen, Irvin Cohn, May Colburn, Sam Cordova, Donna Dischel, Anna Lee Dreyer, Philip Engel, Cynthia Eppel, Stephen Fine, Dorothy Tifford Foreman, Mark Fox, Emma Friedman, Bernard Garad, Derek Gerson, Lisa Goldberg, Sharon Goldenberg, David Goodman, Albert Gross, Anne Greenwald Hale, Louis Handel, May Eisenberg, Simon Jacobs, Jerome Jaffe, Barry Robert Katz, Esther Katz, Miriam Klein, Bertha Kunick Kleinman, Christopher Knopf, Adele Lee Koenig, Bridget Crossan, Sarah Kurtzman, Jerome Lechman, Harry Lever, Dorothy Levine, Francis Levy, Ida Lieberman, Linda Komorski Leiker, Ida Lippy, Samantha Mack, Patricia Malamud, Arthur Mallon, Philip Marber, Esther Medina, Barbara Black Miller, Melinda Shankoff Miller, Bobbin Masagian, Helen Mittler, Tarleton Morton, Raisa Narkshin, Nicole Nyman, Carol Neustadt, Ellen Parker, Laura Pashko, Sherman Pasner, Harold Perliter, Estera Pulvermacher, Ira Ressler, Bernard Rodsky, Barbara Rowan, Ethel Rubin, Jeff Rudick, Ephraim Rudin, Alan Revelson, Mary Schultz Blitzer, Raymond Schwartz, Ruth Shaken, Ethel Sherman, Edna Stein, Aileen Sweet, Samuel Taub, Joanne Jocelyn Troy, Henry Eulendorf, Robert Stephen Wegg, Renee White, Milton Weintraub, Louis Wool, Rita Yates, Louis Zift. If there are other names to be mentioned at this time, Sukasa,
My grandmother Rose Sills and my aunt Ray Friedman.
thank you.
My
My
good
mom,
friend. Ovick.
go ahead, Rebecca.
Please speak their names aloud or speak them.
Alma Merle Beatty, my mother.
Thank you. And we bear in our hearts as well the names of those who died in defense of the United States, those who died in defense of the state of Israel, those who died through senseless acts of terror, those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We mention them all, we bear them all in our hearts. We
That's
say together, Yitkadal, Shemei Rabbah,
Amen.
Yalma Divra Chirute, V'yamlich Malchute, B'chayechon of Yomechon, V'chayedecho Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala Uvizman Kariv, V'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shmei Rabbah Mevorach, Le'olam Ulome Almaya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shmei D'Kudisha,
Great show.
La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran bi'alma v'imru amen.
Amen.
Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael,
Remove. Amen.
v'useh shalom b'imramav, v'yaseh shalom.
Shalom Aleinu.
V'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen.
Amen.
May God, who makes peace in the high places, make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes, Make peace in the household of Israel. Make peace among all the families and nations of earth. And let us say,
Amen.
may I,
Amen.
Rabbi, have you heard anything about Susie?